waking army in the night. Lock the doors and board the windows. Oh, oh, a storm is coming that you can't escape. Tears are falling like blood and rain. The thunder's shaking and it's gonna break. A storm is coming that you can't escape.
Afterlife. The end of the world, I will do better next time. Oh yeah, I know it.
All right, everybody, I want you to focus on what's going on in the southeast, specifically the panhandle of Florida, NEXRAD radar tower, and also the one in the Carolinas. We've seen this type of beam before, and we've seen it tend to block weather. And I believe that is what's going on with this big weather system that is now drenching severe droughted areas of southern Florida. And it's not just that, my friends. These radar have been going nuts leading up to and after this has already began. And I want you to think to yourself, what are the chances that a storm of this size finally hits that area as soon as those Russian warships were making their way down into Cuba and now in the Bahamas? It is my opinion that this stuff is very much connected, and we could be seeing some weather manipulation because of it. Take a listen to this. Welcome back, June 12th, 2024. If you haven't thought about this already, I think it's kind of weird, even though I know it's hurricane season, but still, I find it extremely odd that out of nowhere, many parts of Florida, as you could see here, that were in a severe drought, basically begging for water, are now getting 10 plus, in some places 15, 20 inches of rain right now, including tons of counties. Miami-Dade and Broward counties are under flash flood emergencies right now as we speak. Above that is Sarasota. Just a crazy weather event going on in southern Florida. Basically from the mid-half down is completely saturated, but the start of this storm really took place as soon as we started hearing about those Russian warships beginning their drills. I know they've been there for some time, but they began those drills recently after making their way through international waters to Cuba, specifically Havana. And a lot of those drills are now taking place in the Bahamas and all this area that's completely covered now by any sort of satellite that you and I could look at. I mean, look at it. Anybody in the public, at least, that might want to look at these satellites would not see a thing. And this has been a wild situation going on with these Russian forces down in the Cuba area, specifically in Havana, and they're also drilling in the Bahamas, as I said. So again, for those of you that follow me and are very into the weather modification part of what I do, then think about this for a second. Do you think that this storm possibly could have been more enhanced in order to specifically block satellite viewing of this area? I mean, we have tons of websites we can use to where we could actually get close enough to actually see if they're blowing things up down there or explosions in the water. We saw it off the coast of Florida when they did those experimental explosions I did those videos on earlier today, where it's very odd on its own that those ships traveled right through that area to get to where they are, both in Cuba and now in the Bahamas. So just a thought that I'm throwing out there, it's kind of odd that all of a sudden now all this water and moisture and flooding is going on in these areas of Florida that needed it really bad, but it's happening at the same exact time all of these military operations are going on in Cuba, the Bahamas, and very close to where we live here in the United States. At this point, anything's possible. We could be creating this ourselves to give them a hard time in their drilling operations, but it's hard to deny what's going on these satellite feeds and the NEXRAD radar. They were clearly going nuts and showing those blocking type beams we've seen in the past, forcing that storm further south and keeping it there. That's another thing interesting about this, is that it is also affecting Cuba. So this whole area is being blocked up by clouds and storms. All right, my friends, take that for what it's worth. I'm going to look more into this, of course, but let me know what you think down below. I'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Does anyone else find it weird that we have 4 Russian warships crossing through an area that we had U.S. Navy experimental explosions almost 2 years ago to the day during hurricane season? This is a very odd situation. I'm going to try to explain it right now. Oh, and not to mention, take a look at all the military in the United States right now. This is a high number to have at any given time, specifically the Southeast. I know a lot of training goes on down here, but this is way more than what we're used to seeing. The entire East Coast is is lit up right now, and it seems like it's ready to go. Welcome back. It is June 11th, 2024, and we have a situation taking place that involves the Russians, the US military, as well as the Canadian military going on near the Keys of Florida. Now, I have something that ties into this situation that happened almost 2 years ago. But very quick, I want to take a look at this and explain what's going on. This is coming out of Washington. A group of Russian warships passed within hailing distance of Florida's eastern coastline Tuesday, with the US Navy and Coast Guard following close behind, according to open source maritime and air tracking information. The Coast Guard Cutter Stone, Navy-guided missile destroyers USS Truxtun and USS Donald Cook, and the Royal Canadian Navy frigate HMCS Vele de Quebec sailed after 4 Russian vessels reportedly headed to Cuba. Okay, and you can see the ships here. I'm not sure which ones here are exactly the Russian ships, but there was apparently 4 of them, and they came in this direction, which means if we jump over to Google Earth, they clearly came from Western Russia, and they sailed down through the Atlantic, and they came in this direction here, and this is where things are going to get very interesting. I'm going to line us up here, and the path of these ships came down in this direction, and then inside the Bahamas and down the eastern coast of Florida. Now, that alone is scary. I don't know what Russia's doing here. Apparently, they're doing some drills with Havana, Cuba. This is being related to the Cuban Missile Crisis, and apparently one of the most intense standoffs we're having since that time period. It's being said that these ships are in a standoff type situation. Anyway, take a look at this. 2 years ago, almost, we had 2 experimental explosions. I know I have 3 labeled here. One of them is wrong. It's this one and this one. These were done by the US Navy, and you can see that right here. Reported earthquake off Florida coast actually was an experimental explosion by the US Navy. This happened twice. Take a look at this. A reported 3.7 magnitude earthquake was actually an experimental explosion, according to the US Geological Survey. The explosion was reported just over 100 miles from Daytona Beach off the Florida coast at 4 p.m. Saturday, and these were apparently to see how ships would survive these types of blasts. In this trial, the Navy set off a 10,000-pound charge just 100 yards from a ship it survived. So apparently that was the excuse. And of course, as you can see here, I made a video on it 2 years ago, and this was during hurricane season. So take a look at this. Tropical Storm Claudette, this was during the hurricane season of 2 years ago, which is where we are right now. So I want you to think about this for a second. 2 years ago, and then a few months later, 2 experimental explosions were detonated off the east coast of Florida, causing 3.7 and a 3.9 earthquake. Those are huge, especially when being caused by our own military. And now 2 years later, almost to the exact day, we have Russian ships passing through that exact area. They had to pass that exact blast area to get down to this part of eastern Florida and the Keys. So what I'm trying to say here is, did we know, or did we have some sort of idea that this might take place back then, and it's finally happening now? We were having major issues with Russia 2 years ago, and now we have the whole world talking about these Russian ships that are so close to our home. And this goes without saying, but look at the amount of military aircraft we have in the United States today. I made a video on this and a post on X that went viral because the day of Trump's court verdict had tons of military ready on the eastern coast. This is an entire US thing going on right now. Way more military than we're used to seeing, specifically in the southeast. That is very, very much expected right now, being that there are Russian warships down in Havana. So this presence alone tells you that something is absolutely going on in the US, or something is being prepared for. All right, my friends, I appreciate you all. What do you think is going on here? Why did we have these experimental explosions basically within the route that these Russian ships had to take to get to Cuba? It may be nothing, it may be something. These could have been war games we were playing, and not just testing ships, but getting ready for some sort of situation that involves another country and their ships getting too close to us using international waters. All right, my friends, I appreciate you all. Please share this video, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.